By now, you should have identified the main ideas in your text, identified or started identifying supporting details for each of your main ideas, and now we're ready to work on a timeline, which is another required part of your project and your poster. The goal for this lesson is that you can identify 4 important events and dates in your person's life by writing them in sequence. Remember, that means in order on your project plan. So here's your project plan. Most of you have chosen to do this in Notability, or you may be writing this paper pencil. Regardless, what you put on it needs to be the same. The focus for this lesson is doing a timeline. Remember, a timeline is a list of events and dates in order from first to last. You are just going to choose and take notes on the important events and dates that you want to include on your poster and when you present in front of the class. So like I said, you're going to put your important event and then the date that it happened. Here is a hint for you. Pay attention right now. I'm going to tell you something important. At the back of your book, the back of your biography, there's a page that says key dates. Essentially, it's a timeline. Most of them begin with when the important person was born, and it ends with when the important person died. So I'm going to take a look at this. Remember, my person was Harriet Tubman, and it says in 1820, she was born in Bucktown, Maryland. That's a good beginning to my timeline, as well as 1913, she dies in Auburn, New York. That's a good end to my timeline. But the requirement is that we include at least 4 important events and dates, so I need to choose at least 2 more. I'm also going to include that in 1849, she used the Underground Railroad to escape from slavery. In 1850, she makes her first out of 19 trips to the South to free some slaves. And in 1861, she begins working during the Civil War. She worked for the Union. Okay, I'm not going to just copy these dates. I've already read my whole book, so I might put them in my own words and add more information. There's that grading rubric. Gotta have 4. I just picked out 5 important dates and events that I'm going to include. So think of that today as you do yours. So my first important event that I said I was going to include was when she was born. And she was born in Bucktown, Maryland in 1820. I also wanted to include that she escaped from slavery using the Underground Railroad. That was in 1849. She made 19 trips to the South, and I know a little bit more about this by going back in my book and reading. And so I'm going to put this in my own words and say she made 19 trips to the South to help other people escape from slavery. She did that for 10 years, from 1850 to 1860. So I'm going to put a range there. And I also mentioned that she worked for the Union during the Civil War. In my own words, I'm going to say she made a hard decision to leave home and help cook, nurse, and spy during the Civil War. By putting it in my own words and adding more detail, this shows that I truly understand what I'm reading and that I went back in my book to find that information instead of just copying from that timeline that I just showed you. This event, important event number 4, was in 1861. Now I have 4 important events. I could stop right there and still meet the requirements of the rubric, but I also wanted to include the end point of my important person's life. And so I'm going to add a number 5 and say that Harriet died from a lung disease. Again, I know that because I read through my whole book. I'm not just going to put her death down, but the actual reason why. And that was in 1913. So by the end of class, this is what your project plan should look like in this section. Complete sentences, listing important events in order or in sequence from the first to the last, and have correct dates that go with each event. Now it's your turn. You are going to identify 4 or more events in your person's life. Remember to look in that timeline or those key dates in the back of your book to get you started. But please do not just copy them. Look back in the book to find more information about those events and dates and put them in your own words. Last, write them in sequence on your project planning worksheet. And that's your job for today.